Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Rather take my own bag.
I think that's a good price.
I think it should come from the company if they're going to pass out as opposed to passing along to the consumer.
Paper or reusable? Get ready to pay if you need a bag at a grocery store as BC's ban on single-use plastics rolls on. Plus,
we are looking at temperatures that are continuing to rise in many areas of the province.
the province braces for more wildfires as thunderstorms and wind move in. But outside help is also coming. And
It's very sacred, and it's got a lot of history for our people.
an ancient village site is being returned to a First Nation in Nanaimo.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Get ready to pay for paper or a reusable bag the next time you hit the grocery store. And your next takeout meal is not allowed to have plastic or styrofoam. As Mira Baines tells us, they're the latest steps in the province's push to cut down on single-use plastics.
New regulations have come into effect across BC aimed at phasing out single-use plastics. That means businesses can offer paper bags for 25 cents each and reusable bags for $2. BC's rules first rolled out last December to align with federal guidelines. Some shoppers are still getting used to the idea.
We do have a lot of reusable bags, but I just forgot it today, and we're on the way back, so I just picked this up and just gonna hold it all in my hands.
Would I pay 25 cents per bag? I think it's a bit ridiculous. It's actually on the, I think it should come from the company if they're going to pass out as opposed to passing along to the consumer. I think it should be absorbed by the business.
The fact of having to pay, 25 cents or whatever, call me cheap, but yeah, I'll just rather take my own bag.
For restaurants and food service businesses, the cost of packaging takeout has gone up.
Probably in the order of 2 or 3 or 4 cents. That makes a big difference. You know, people go, it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal when you start dealing with thousands of different containers.
The rules were delayed by 6 months to give businesses more time to switch. Enforcement will be geared towards education.
We will respond to complaints, but our approach is going to be to work with retailers to help them understand what compliance looks like.
Still, a big question remains: how many times do you need to use a reusable bag before it becomes more environmentally friendly than a single-use plastic one? A UN study has found a cotton bag must be reused 50 to 100 times to make it more environmentally friendly than a plastic bag. A durable non-woven bag 10 to 20 times, and a low-density polyethylene 5 to 10 times, and a paper one 4 to 8 times.
And in many instances, we actually don't use reusable bags enough to actually accrue an environmental benefit.
The City of Vancouver started a program that allows people to donate reusable shopping bags so people without homes or on low incomes can use them. It's given out 15,000 reusable bags. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
The BC Wildfire Service says thunderstorms and windy conditions are expected to roll into the province this week, and that could spark more blazes.
We are looking at temperatures that are continuing to rise in many areas of the province, including the southern half of the province, so getting back into that 40-degree range. With that, of course, comes the drying of fuels. And as a part of that weather that we're expecting, we're also anticipating some thunderstorms and some lightning. So there is the potential for more ignitions from the lightning that we may get in the southern half of the province in the next week or so.
Meanwhile, provincial crews are supporting the Popcom Fire Department as it responds to a blaze northwest of Walleach Lake, close to Highway 1, just east of Agassiz in the Fraser Valley. That fire is now being held and is suspected to be caused by people. Fire crews say despite extensive publicity about a province-wide campfire ban brought in on Friday, the Chilliwack Department put out several campfires the past 2 days and handed out fines. BC is also getting a national and international firefighting boost. A 20-person crew from Nova Scotia came in over the weekend. 2 firefighting aircraft from Ontario have landed and will be stationed in Williams Lake. And Australian and New Zealand firefighters are expected to arrive on Friday to help battle the flames. And despite that BC-wide campfire ban, the risk still exists. Richmond Mounties say a dangerous grass fire recently was caused by a discarded cigarette butt. And as Tom Popick reports, officials are again pleading for you to be more careful.
Discarded cigarette butts are not just a growing concern in this dry weather. For firefighters, it's a constant pain in the...
I would say probably on a weekly basis where there's, a cigarette butt has caused some sort of a fire.
Vancouver Fire Acting Assistant Chief Zawada says it doesn't take much to start a blaze these days.
But I would say the worst problem is just cigarettes that aren't properly butted out.
Just take a look. West Vancouver Fire Department released this video from last year. Afternoon workers on a smoke break carefully butting out in the garden soil. Then hours later, that cigarette smoldering and turning a hedge into an inferno within minutes. The homeowners frantically scrambling to douse the flames with a garden hose before firefighting crews arrive.
Definitely danger in the parks. Everything is really dry this time of year, from, hedges, grass, everything.
It's why the Vancouver Park Board is also raising the alarm, reminding people smoking and open fires are prohibited in parks and on beaches year-round, urging anyone using barbecues at designated picnic sites to be vigilant. In the woods, carelessness can cause catastrophe. The BC Wildfire Service blames smoking for the 2017 Elephant Hills wildfire near Ashcroft. Over 191,000 hectares of forest burned over 3 months, destroying more than 100 homes and causing over $1 billion in damage.
Really trying to bring awareness to not throw the butts on the ground.
Yasmin Schleppens is hoping to clean up the problem, founding the Butt Watch campaign. She's urging all smokers to get into the habit of using dedicated trash cans or keep those butts in your pants.
It's really good to have one of those pocket ashtrays with you that you can put the cigarette butt in. It basically butts out the cigarette butt for you.
A simple solution, so when there's smoking, there doesn't have to be fire. Tom Popick, CBC News, Kelowna.
Let's bring in Darius Madavi for a first check on weather and a familiar and rather grim map.
Yes. If I had known that he was going to end with that line, where there's smoking, there doesn't have to be fire, I would have shown the smoke map first, just to stick with it.
It's
but
okay.
we'll see it in a second. Fire danger is still extremely high. So as we continue to see some higher winds and possibly some storms at the end of this, mid to end of this week, we could see some new fire starts that could then really quickly become really active fires, because that fire danger is not going down anywhere anytime soon, especially except for maybe in the northwest. Now, we have this ridge of high pressure building back in. So this isn't like last week where they had the heat dome down in California and that reached up here. Not quite that extreme, not quite that long lasting, but we've had those heat warnings down in the southern interior for a long time now. That ridge of high pressure going to bring temperatures back up in parts of the southern interior into the 40s once again, so be ready for that. We've already seen a heat warning come back up for the northeast. In Alberta, there was just a heat warning up here earlier today, but it quickly spread to the rest of Alberta, so I would expect that in parts of the southern interior, we may see some more heat warnings pop up in the next 24 to 48 hours, or 24 hours probably, and then possibly for inland areas of the lower mainland as well, because it does look like we'll meet the heat warning criteria, but just possibly not for long enough for them to actually issue that heat warning. Here's that smoke map, as I promised, including much more of the southern interior getting some of that smoke now, and parts of the lower mainland because of that fire just east of Duncan, so looking out for that. In terms of conditions for precipitation, as I mentioned, really only coming to the northwest, and so not really much relief on the way. But we'll take a closer look at temperatures and those conditions later this hour.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
An ancient village site is now being returned to the Snuneymuxw First Nation on Vancouver Island. More than 2 hectares of land next to the Milestone River in Nanaimo will be given back, with plans for redevelopment. As Claire Palmer reports, it's being hailed as a step forward in BC's path to reconciliation.
An eyesore on Nanaimo's waterfront, now with a promising future.
Well, the whole intent of our government is to look at the future of our people, and that's what we've done. We've looked at the future of our unborn to what can we develop and create for them moving into the future as part of the city of Nanaimo, as Nanaimo people, as the first peoples of this land.
The former Howard Johnson Hotel property has been eyed for potential development for years, but is located on an ancient village site of the Snuneymuxw. Now, the province and Snuneymuxw have purchased the 2.67 hectare property, which previously housed a hotel, parking lot, and other businesses. BC contributed $26 million with the express purpose of Snuneymuxw development.
It's 170 years since the Douglas Treaty, where promises were made. that would be protected as a village site. It obviously hasn't been. And so this is part of our journey of reconciliation together to make sure that that's restored.
Very excited, very happy. As you noticed, our people are here today to hear this announcement. And a lot of ex-chiefs, ex-leaders of our people are here today to follow through and bring this across the finish line for our people. Is very, very happy day for us.
Last year, the Snuneymuxw spoke out against a proposed development on the site, saying that they wanted to be involved because of the sanctity of the land.
It's very sacred, and it's got a lot of history for our people. So without us being at the table, we had to come forward and make our case, and we've done that, and here we are today. So we're very thankful that we're here today talking about this land being transferred back to Snuneymuxw people.
The nation says they plan to demolish the abandoned hotel in the next 4 months. The province and the city called the return of the land a win.
This was a traditional village site. It didn't take rocket science to figure out that at some point, if you're really going to have reconciliation, you would have to either compensate or return the lands or both. And today we're starting down a really good path. This is going to be a wonderful economic opportunity for the city, most importantly for Snuneymuxw.
The provincial government will maintain ownership until demolition and cleanup of the site is complete. It will then be officially transferred to the nation. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Nanaimo.
They are a friendly staple of warm, sunny weather and a valuable pollinator. But researchers are worried that dozens of butterflies are missing in Metro Vancouver. As Abby Luciano reports, scientists say native tree species could help bring them back.
Anecdotally, this year has been really bad.
Stephen Deeds Vink is a Butterfly Way ranger working with the David Suzuki Foundation. For 6 years, his job has been to keep butterflies and bees thriving in this North Vancouver green space called Butterfly Way Lane. But he's worried about the butterflies.
This year, I've seen about 2 or 3, and normally we'd see about 100. So, just in this little area.
UBC researchers are trying to figure out where the pollinators may be. This past winter could be to blame.
Personally, I think it's probably related to that cold snap, although it was only 3 days. We don't know for sure that the cold snap was absolutely due to climate change, but we do know that the extremes are more likely to happen with climate change.
On the species recording site iNaturalist, people can upload photos of butterflies they've spotted. It shows on the Lower Mainland, people uploaded 672 butterflies from March to July. But last year, people shared more than 1,500 images. So what could help bring more of them back?
Native species of butterflies and moths really do need native species of plants in order to survive.
The UBC study finds local street trees bring in the butterflies. They're associated with 5 times as many native butterflies compared to non-native trees in Vancouver.
Maybe we should think a little bit more about the geographic origin of the tree that we're planting in our cities.
Researchers also suggest limiting the use of insecticides.
If the butterflies disappear, I think that we've got a bigger problem. And I think with young kids and everybody, who doesn't like a butterfly flying around?
For now, Deeds Vink and other volunteers are growing Butterfly Way Lane and hope more of the namesake insects return soon. Abby Luciano, CBC News, North Vancouver.
Just 2 days after surviving an assassination attempt, Donald Trump has officially won the Republican presidential nomination and named his vice presidential running mate at the RNC. Ohio Junior Senator J.D. Vance will sit on the ticket alongside the former president. Our Paul Hunter is inside the convention as delegates welcome the VP pick.
On a certain level, this Republican National Convention looks like any other, celebratory, happily partisan, and noisy. But ask delegates on the floor about what happened to Donald Trump on the weekend and...
I think it means President Trump's going to win and has to win. Look, they've tried to silence him, bankrupt him, jail him, and now kill him.
Biden is calling for unity. Is that possible? Is it an achievable? Should it be achieved? Can it be achieved at this point?
He can take his unity and shove it up his ass.
Indeed, at this convention, emotions are sky high. But there was also a job to do, to officially nominate Donald Trump as the Republican Party's candidate for the White House.
The great state of Nebraska.
The great state of California.
The great Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
State by state, the votes were tallied, with a delegate from Florida, Trump's son, Eric, putting him over the top.
For the greatest president that's ever lived, and that's Donald J. Trump, hereby declaring him the Republican nominee for President of the United States of America.
Nomination official, Trump's big reveal was his running mate, J.D. Vance, a first-term senator from Ohio, just 39 years old. He's a best-selling author and a fierce Trump loyalist. He's Trump's pick for the vice presidency. But Vance was also once a fierce Trump critic. In 2016, a self-described never-Trumper who called Trump an idiot. Later saying that view was mistaken. And now here he is. Meanwhile, outside the security perimeter in Milwaukee, anti-Trumpers underlining ever more the seemingly unbridgeable political divide in this country.
We don't need a convicted criminal back in the White House. And sick and tired of it.
Paul Hunter reporting. The FBI says it is making progress into its investigation of the man who shot Trump on Saturday. Karen Pauls is in Butler, Pennsylvania, where that shooting looms large.
2 days after the attempted assassination, this couple still can't think about anything else.
This is my hometown. This happened here.
They had arrived at the Donald Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania early, full of anticipation.
We got relatively close to the stage.
Everybody's excited to be there.
But about 6 minutes into Trump's speech, people in the crowd saw something suspicious and tried to alert the police.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Right there, see him?
A bullet hit the former president in the ear. One man in the crowd was killed, 2 others injured before snipers shot the shooter.
As soon as I heard that first sound, I knew what it was. And my first focus was my fiance.
I wanted to see if President Trump was okay. I wanted to see if my family was okay, my fiance okay. You know, it was just, even though it happened so fast, it was like it was in slow motion.
The shooter was up on that building, less than 150 meters away from the stage, right over there by that flag. The questions, the finger pointing, and the reviews started immediately.
President Trump wasn't killed, but the fact that someone under Secret Service protection was even hurt is a failure.
The FBI says it has now gained access to the phone of the shooter, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, and have completed a search of his house and vehicle. But authorities still don't know why Crooks carried out what he must have known would be a suicide mission.
We're going to let the investigation and the review deliver the factual findings, and we'll act upon those.
Hi, handsome.
For neighbors, nothing stands out.
It seems like your average American dorky young man.
Pictures of the crowd.
Nicole Cornaby is still processing what happened.
I'm really just relying on my faith and hope that that we can be a country united.
You were right underneath. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Butler, Pennsylvania.
The attempted assassination of Donald Trump has raised many questions about security for politicians in the U.S. Now, when asked about political leaders in Canada, Federal Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc says there is no cause for concern.
I have every confidence that the RCMP take all the steps necessary to protect Canadian politicians. Yesterday, I convened a briefing with the Commissioner of the RCMP, the Director of CSIS, the Deputy Minister of Public Safety. They went through the threat landscape. They talked to me about the additional vigilance that they've put in place since the assassination attempt on former President Trump Saturday evening.
Now, as Trump basks in the political glow of the Republican National Convention, he's also scored a major legal victory. The case against him for allegedly stealing and concealing a trove of classified U.S. government documents has been abruptly dismissed. As Richard Madden explains, it was a controversial call by a Trump-appointed judge.
Thousands gathered at the Republican National Convention, celebrating that stunning court decision.
Yes, I'm happy to see that because no one else would have been tried under the same circumstances.
Florida Judge Eileen Cannon, appointed by Trump when he was president, dismissed the classified documents case against him, ruling the appointment and funding of the special counsel, Jack Smith, was unconstitutional.
Specifically, she said that because he wasn't appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate, that violated the appointments clause of the Constitution.
In a statement, Trump says the dismissal should just be the first step, followed quickly by the dismissal of the other ones. It's another major setback to the special counsel in a case widely viewed as the strongest of the four against Trump. Investigators found boxes of top-secret files scattered at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort after he left office, with a former president accused of obstructing justice when authorities tried to get them back.
Yeah, initial reaction upon reading that this morning. Boom. The case is dead in Florida. This was the most obvious and simple case. He got lucky with the judge assigned to it, and he'll never face scrutiny on this before the election.
So far, Trump has managed to slow or sidetrack many cases against him. The sentencing, after being convicted of 34 felonies in his hush money trial, postponed after the Supreme Court ruled he has immunity as a former president. That ruling delayed his federal trial for allegedly plotting to overturn the 2020 election, and a similar case in Georgia, delayed by conflict of interest allegations. And the special counsel has confirmed he will appeal the Florida ruling, but that process will take time, virtually guaranteeing Trump will not face any of these trials before November's election. Richard Madden, CBC News, Washington.
Still to come, we're going to talk with the woman known in Greater Victoria as the Sex Lady about leading the way on teaching sexual health for the last 20 years. It's time to talk about sex education. Our guest tonight is widely known in Greater Victoria as the Sex Lady. Jennifer Gibson has spent her career providing sexual health education to an estimated 200,000 kids, teenagers, and parents and guardians. And this month, she's celebrating a milestone anniversary. 20 years since she first started as a coordinator of community education services for Island Sexual Health. Jennifer, thank you very much for joining us. 20 years, a long time, many changes. First of all, how has the way you and others teach and approach sexual health changed in that time?
Awesome. Well, Dan, thanks for having me on. It's such a great opportunity to have a conversation. The fundamentals haven't changed, but one of the things, as you know, as a media expert, the media has changed a lot, and our access to information has changed, by leaps and bounds. So we have needed to make sure that our kids have access to accurate information so that when they encounter information through the media, that they can temper the two.
And what do you think, within that context, what do you think are the biggest challenges facing how we educate young people on sexual health and what they're receiving?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things, Dan, is that we want to be proactive. We want to have many conversations about this, just like we would have many conversations about all of the big life topics. One of the great youth that I worked with this year, when I walked into the room, said, "Oh, are you here to do the BLT?" And I said, "The BLT, like bacon, lettuce, and tomato? No, I think I'm in the wrong place." And they said, "No, big life topic." And I was like, absolutely, this is a big life topic. So we need to have many conversations about it. And we need to give little bits of information so we can build those foundations, so we can build our comfort, and so we can dispel myths, and so that we can bust shame and stigma and embarrassment.
So of 200,000 kids, teenagers, and parents that you're estimated to have taught over the years, what are those topics, those questions you keep getting?
Oh, well, we call it the P's. So lots of questions about penises, periods, pornography. So lots of questions about that. And, really it's curiosity. We are curious people. We're curious about all kinds of things. And so especially something as dynamic and I think as a force for good as sexuality, of course we have curiosity about that. So lots of questions about, am I normal? Are my feelings normal? Is my body normal? And the answer is, of course, absolutely. We're all our own version of normal.
Do you have a key piece of advice for teenagers, young people trying to navigate their sexuality and sexual health?
Absolutely. Ask questions, look for really good information. If you ask someone a question and, they seem awkward in their answer, ask someone else, because there's people out there who will give you really good information. And I think the other thing is to recognize, especially when we're looking to adults and parents, to give them grace as well, because not all of us have been lucky enough to have these conversations with, the adults in our lives. So sometimes adults are kind of, they're flying by the seat of their pants and kind of I don't really know how much information is too much. And so I think for our young people, have grace with the adults in your lives, and for the adults and for, the elders in the community, is to really just be open and build the conversations about this. And it doesn't have to be awkward. It can be comfortable if we have enough conversations about this, right? If we only talked about math once a year, can you imagine if we had to talk about, the Pythagorean theory, once a year? You would be so nervous and anxious about it. So, when it comes to sexuality, I always think that let's talk about the euality piece. Yes, those first three letters are exciting and, vivid, and, we bring all our own stuff to it, but it's the euality piece. It's the communication, the care, the consent, the compassion, right? The comfort.
Jennifer Gibson, we appreciate your time and your perspective over 20 years. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, Dan, thank you so much. Be well. Take care.
Still to come, progress being made on a wildfire between Labrador and Quebec. But some people are still out of their homes. That's next. The annual summer gathering of Canada's premiers kicked off today in Halifax. They began their meetings by sitting down with indigenous leaders. The scheduled topic was healthcare, but as Olivia Stefanovich explains, indigenous leaders had something else on their minds.
Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston is playing host this week at a big meeting. He's meeting with his provincial and territorial counterparts, but today a meeting with Indigenous leaders who had their own priorities, with little time to share them. Each Indigenous leader only allocated 10 minutes to speak.
Well, it doesn't send a great message, really. Let's be honest. If we're going to have a 10-minute conversation, what can we really talk about in 10 minutes? Not much.
The conversation took place behind closed doors and ended up lasting longer than expected. 3 hours instead of the 2.5 originally scheduled.
Honestly, this is the third Council of the Federation meeting that I've attended, and I think that there was more of an understanding of the direction that we want to take these meetings in the future than there has been in the past 2 years.
National Indigenous leaders say they went into the meeting feeling disrespected, and even though no firm commitments were made, they left with a sense of optimism.
I do feel as though there is openness. Change takes time. It takes relationship building.
We were able to say very frank things and have an open conversation about where we need to go. And now a lot of it is on Doug Ford as the Premier who's hosting Council of Federation next year to work on improving the space.
The Premiers say they're willing to listen and make changes to hear more from Indigenous leaders.
Premiers are going to have a serious conversation with Indigenous leadership about how these meetings take place to make sure that we're evolving and representing as best as possible the leadership across Canada to be able to reach resolution on some of these really challenging issues.
Some of those issues include housing, affordability, and federal-provincial relations, topics expected to dominate the conversations between premiers over the next 2 days. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Halifax.
Crews are making some progress battling a wildfire on the border between Labrador and Quebec. But as Heather Gillis reports, the fire is still dangerous and threatening Labrador City, while people are still out of their homes.
For wildfire evacuees from Labrador City seeking refuge from flames, it's a waiting game.
Town don't burn, I'm happy. I don't care if I'm here for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, as long as the town don't burn.
We have to hope for the best.
Any word about when you can go home?
No.
The fire burned to a size of 14,000 hectares just 4 kilometers outside Labrador City. 4 water bombers and 3 helicopters are dousing it from the Labrador side, more on the Quebec side. No ground crews yet, but today, fire breaks. Even with rain, it's still not controlled.
I don't see it happening, not in the next couple of days.
Amid all the uncertainty, Danielle Avery is biding time at the Canadian Forces Base, carrying her best friend, 12-year-old Rocky, up flights of stairs into her home, away from home.
We're making do. We're doing pretty good. At least we have a place to stay. Yeah. That was the biggest part with the 3 dogs, because we would never separate.
Avery works in healthcare and had to take care of others before getting herself out.
It was a mad panic to get our patients out as well.
What was that like?
It was a lot. It took overnight to get everybody out, but everybody got out safely, so that's the main thing.
A hurried and hectic evacuation for everyone.
Horrifying. I was quit smoking, but I had to take off the patch, and my nerves is gone.
Same for Riley Adams. His truck broke down on the way.
We towed it to a safe spot, loaded up, made plans, and then we turned around and went back to get in our vehicle. And we still got out. We got what we could.
Meanwhile, this is the second time in a month now Happy Valley Goose Bay has housed people fleeing fire, first by the hundreds, now by the thousands, making it busy at fast food joints.
A muffin will be great. A muffin?
And at the Salvation Army's emergency food truck.
It's just keeping going. We're working from 8 in the morning till 2 o'clock in the morning.
With the Premier worrying about the toll it's taking.
I'm concerned about the cost that is borne by the people that I saw in Goose Bay and Happy Valley Goose Bay, the fatigue that they had, the cost that they borne both emotionally and fiscally.
There's no word on how much longer people in this town will be lending a helping hand. Some evacuees are hoping to get home by the end of the week, but fire and the weather is unpredictable, so it's too early to say. Heather Gillis, CBC News, Happy Valley Goose Bay.
Hundreds of people carried the Olympic torch through Paris yesterday and today as crowd lined the streets to watch. About 10,000 people were chosen to carry the iconic flame across France. Many athletes, while others represented areas like the arts, culture, and volunteering. The torch's journey will end on July 26, when it will be used to light the Olympic cauldron on the River Seine to mark the start of the Games. And CBC will bring you all the action as your official Olympic broadcaster. Here's Susan Ormiston, our international climate correspondent, to break down what athletes at Paris are up against.
Tokyo. Olympic tennis. It was blistering hot and humid.
Medvedev is laboring right now.
Russian Daniil Medvedev, second in the world, was struggling. After 2 medical timeouts because of heat, he and the umpire had this exchange.
What can I do? I'm a fighter. I will finish the match, but I can die. If I die, actually, I'm going to take responsibility because it's a very bad company.
Wow, Medvedev just saying that the conditions are terrible. Feels terrible.
Medical! He wasn't the only athlete wilting.
Hot, humid weather plays havoc with a marathon.
The marathon and race walking had to be relocated out of Tokyo, and still hot.
It's much warmer than expected.
Spain's tennis star Paula Badoza had to withdraw because of severe heat stroke. Holding another Olympics in midsummer is tempting more scorching competitions. And Europe is warming faster than other continents. But it's not just Olympics. Fires, floods, melting is forcing us to confront how is climate change impacting sport? And can sport adapt?
We're seeing more heat waves now than we ever have before. 15 years.
We asked Madeleine Orr, a sports ecologist at the University of Toronto. She recently wrote Warming Up, How Climate Change is Changing Sport.
The problem becomes if you're not able to sweat, you're not able to cool down, your inner organs are going to start to get pretty warm as well. And that's where we start to see major catastrophic incidents of heat stroke, for example. So the big bad is heat.
The signs are everywhere.
More than hot enough to cause serious harm to human health. Temperatures are now set to climb even higher.
Now, July is on track to be the hottest month in recorded history.
Extreme weather is disrupting world competition. A super typhoon forced World Cup rugby to cancel games for the first time ever.
Typhoon Hagibis that is heading towards Japan is predicted to have very significant and widespread impact.
Pakistan's historic floods swamped most soccer fields, except one, mercifully on higher ground.
It became the medical distribution site. It became where they served food to the community because people know where the soccer field is, but it also was the place that was dry.
Wildfires last summer dispersed red smoke thousands of kilometers, forcing pro sport to cancel games. Under the smoke, there was no community sport either.
That's the challenge, is if you live near a wildfire, you're probably not competing. It just shuts it down, and those kids definitely are feeling it.
In summer or winter, heat is a weapon. World Cup ski events in the Alps were canceled 9 times this year because of snowless slopes.
We are seeing a 35-day drop on both sides of the Atlantic in the skiable days, roughly. 300 athletes wrote a letter to Federation of Skiing last year asking for more action on this.
The climate is becoming a ferocious opponent. Just ask the athletes. Olympians warned in June of health risks, even with specialized heat training, releasing a major report, Rings of Fire.
If we are competing in these hotter conditions, yeah, it's definitely scary.
You're going to have athletes who are barely alive and unable to perform at their best.
It's Vincent Lapointe of Canada picking up the silver.
Laurence Vincent Lapointe, who won silver and bronze, knows all about too much heat.
This was exactly what never give up means.
Her victories in Tokyo even more precious after a heat-related collapse. She told us she's never forgotten it.
I had an hour and a half
to recover from my first race of the day on to my next race. Suddenly, like I said, I cannot move. I'm laying down in the shade because there's nothing to do. I'm just like feeling too sick to move. I had to jump into an ice bath. After that, they had to like lay me down in a AC room with electrolyte water and lots of protein bars and just like pressure sleeves on my legs in the air and everything. And everyone was worried, me included.
The heat and humidity almost ended the dream she'd had since childhood.
So the problem is most people think of what it was like when they were young, right? When I was a kid, you know, you had to drink a bit and you had to put your sunscreen and you were fine. But nowadays, if you don't drink like 3 times as much and you don't do this and that, like very, very specific things for cooling yourself in between races, then you can drop.
Madeleine Orr is urging athletes to advocate for change, using their power and influence as flag bearers for their country and for climate action, including breaking ties with some sponsors.
Athletes are competing for teams that might be sponsored by an entity that doesn't necessarily want to talk about climate change. So for example, if you're competing on Team Canada, which is sponsored at the moment by Petrocan and RBC, 2 brands obviously connected to funding fossil fuels and producing fossil fuels, it can feel a bit tricky of figuring out, right, like how exactly would I approach some of these issues.
Of course, you're talking in the year that the Edmonton Oilers went to the Stanley Cup.
Yes.
That's not a popular opinion.
It's not, and here's the thing, right? It's really tricky because you're now having to, if you walk away from fossil fuels, to say, okay, well, what are we going to replace it with?
The Olympics have always been about faster, higher, stronger, and now hotter. Athletes need protection from the ravages of our changing climate.
Some good news to come after the break. The dunes at a PEI park are showing signs of recovery after post-tropical storm Fiona 2 years ago. Stick around. A new interactive art installation has opened up in a storied part of Vancouver to embrace the history of Hastings Park, as well as the need for some seating there, but it involves a bit of a climb. You can find this 17-meter-high installation at Empire Fields in Hastings Park, just outside Playland. It has 16 rows of seating and can fit up to 49 people, giving park goers watching events a different perspective. The city and the two Seattle artists behind the project cut the ribbon earlier today to celebrate the launch. Darius Madavi is back with our BC wide weather forecast, but first you're going to show us what's happening in and around that wildfire in Labrador City.
Yes, because there's a small update. Conditions are improving. This is Labrador City here, and you can see this is satellite imagery of the fire, so really this is a little bit more connected than this, but this is generally what they're picking up, and you can see how close it is to the city. Now, there are a few other fires happening in the region. There were some more lightning strikes earlier today. No word yet on whether there are many new fire starts as a result of those that have been continuing to move through the region, but it also came with some precipitation, so a little bit of good news there. You can see that happen here. If it loads in, which maybe it won't, in which case I'll just tell you there was some good precipitation here, and there should be some more this week, which is good news. So far, no real word on what's happening exactly with the fire behavior. It does seem to have calmed down a little bit, but crews are still actively working on the fire, and so we'll probably have a better update for you tomorrow. The wind map is working, though, so you can see earlier today there was some much stronger winds, and they are starting to die down now, which is really good news for that fire behavior as well. So as we get into tomorrow and the following days this week, hopefully some more chances to tackle that fire. Now, if we move over here to BC, you can see our precipitation forecast. This is where we left off last time, Dan. The moisture streaming into the northwest, but not really anywhere else. Maybe as we get into the end of this week, a brief pulse coming to some parts of the piece, but really not much precipitation at all. And temperatures are climbing there again as we see that ridge of high pressure build in. In the south, really no precipitation to speak of, except maybe some convective showers popping up in some places like the southeast, but also that risk of storms and some more lightning that's really building into the end of this week. In terms of temperatures, those are also coming up over the next few days because that ridge of high pressure is still keeping us dry. So those heat warnings still going to be in place, and still don't expect those to come down anytime soon, but they are continuing to climb, especially in the southern interior, where temperatures are expected to hit 40 degrees over the next few days, and will continue to stay high in those mid to high 30s throughout the southern interior, even for the next few days. So don't expect to see too much relief anytime soon. In terms of conditions across the province, we do have, I almost skipped it, we have lots of sunshine happening still, maybe a little bit of precipitation continuing on the north coast, but don't expect to see too much, should still be mostly sunshine there. And down here, a tiny bit of rain possible for Golden, and some storms possible in parts of the southeast, especially in the East Kootenays, so keep an eye on that as well, because we may see some new fire starts as a result, because again, very hot and very dry even down there. Here in Vancouver, nothing but sunshine, except we may start to see a little bit of cloud, Dan, which will be a nice change. It's been a while since we've seen that, and temperatures coming up even here. So expect it to feel just over 30 inland.
Okay, good. And would you please lead us in a deep breath?
Yes.
There we go. Time for Maybe It'll Be Okay Monday. You're here to tell us some encouraging news about dunes on PEI.
Yes, and so let's talk about why dunes are so important. So just take a look at this video from it's drone footage from before Fiona back in 2022. So you can see the dunes there all across Prince Edward Island, and they're really important. You have those grasses growing in front of them. That's really, really valuable from keeping all that the tides away and keeping that sand in place. And it takes a lot to really budge that when you have that really those intact dunes. But Fiona was strong enough to affect that. And that's really bad for both climate adaptation, climate resilience in that area, because then you can see that, that when the water levels rise, that also causes a big problem, and we see new storms, but also for the wildlife that lives there. So it's a huge problem. And if you take a look here, you can see on this graphic that you can see from pre-Fiona, lots of grass, a very intact dune. Post-Fiona, look at how much it eroded it in the grass. And now, fortunately, because of help from the public, with them keeping off of the dunes and work from Parks Canada, we have started to see some recovery. So still a while to go, Dan, but it's definitely good news.
No kidding. Thank you, Darius.
Thank you.
One Stop Shop. This weekend, the BC Lions hosted a free barbershop with only one style available. Stick around for this.
Before the BC Lions and Saskatchewan Roughriders battled it out over the weekend for first place in the CFL, there were plenty of pre-game festivities, including free haircuts.
But they were only offering one style.
Not getting a free mullet haircut?
No, that's never had one and we'll never get one.
You gonna get a mullet after this?
Yeah.
I inquired about it, but I don't have the hair, buddy, right? Jeez.
So here's the mullets right here. Yeah, so we're doing mullets. So AJ Ouellette from the Riders, and Lake from the Riders, and Tebow from our team, and Mackie from our team. They all have mullets, so you can go get a free haircut, free mullet, and then the player is going to then judge the mullet and pick a winner of each one.
Mackie's a popular one.
How do you feel about your new haircut?
I think it's pretty sick. I like it.
How do you feel about the mullet?
I love it. Yeah, it's a good haircut, quick, nice, easy, and it's popular in the sports industry. It means a lot, man. Just for us to even have the opportunity to be here and to have a lot of fans come down, and it's great. It's a nice place to be. Nice weather, good time.
What we do as a family, football is life. BC Lions is life. This is what we do.
Yeah, ready? 3, 2, 1. What the heck's a Rough Rider? What the heck's a Rough Rider?
We started it all off with the season opener. We had 50 Cent play, and we sold it out, our home opener, which is a lot. It's 54,000 people.
I love it. I think that the owner's done a good job in trying to get everyone, into it. And yeah, this is awesome. They don't used to do this type of stuff, but it's a lot of fun.
Really what we try to do at the Lions, we're really trying to make every game an event, really engage fans from everywhere. Which, if you haven't been to a game yet, come and see what it's all about. I guarantee you'll have fun.
And see some sweet haircuts.
Those look like fun.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go, we have 2 big wins for 2 of our CBC colleagues here at CBC Vancouver to share with you from the Jack Webster Journalism Foundation.
Reporter Belle Puri has picked up the Bruce Hutchison Lifetime Achievement Award for her long career in the news industry. Belle has been with CBC Vancouver since 1992. She's done everything here, producing, hosting, and of course, on-camera reporting, and a big mentor.
And Kathy Brown has won the Bill Good Award for her work advocating for the experiences and perspectives of people living with disabilities. Kathy's innovative use of social media, her infectious humor, and her desire to push change has helped make her a leader here in our newsroom. So congrats, Belle and Kathy.
They are awesome.
They are. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And Michelle Gassoub will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. So please join her then. Good night.